I'll do it. You're live.
Today on the Drew Desmond Show, learn all about Whiskey Row history with author Brad Courtney. On October 27th, 1913 was the first day of the Northern Arizona State Fair. And back then, getting around in the state was a little difficult, and the state legislature approved counties getting together and putting together some property tax money to promote fairs, regional fairs. And Yavapai got together with several other counties, Apache, Coconino, Mojave, Navajo, and Yavapai, and they put together this fair. But money was a little sparse, and it took movie star Tom Mix to come in to fill the gap. Mix was a famous movie star. He was sort of the John Wayne of silent movies, and he was a wealthy man. He made more money than several towns back in that day, and he had a fundraiser and coughed in some money himself, donated $6,000, which today would be $150,000, to start the Northern Arizona State Fair. And they had a baseball tournament that Prescott won. They had a car parade, and one of the really notable events that people were very interested in was an aeroplane, Aeroplane, an aeroplane. Most people had never seen an airplane in flight, and they came to the fair, and this biplane was flying upside down and doing, loop-de-loops, and the people were really excited about that. And because of Tom Mix's seed money, it continued on until the depth of the Depression in 1932, when it fizzled out, never to return. Wah, wah. Now, that's been this day in Prescott history. And we also would like to take, before we start talking with Brad, talk about some of the upcoming history events in the area. First, at the Western Heritage Center, on November 6th is the annual banquet for the Prescott Western Heritage Foundation. And this year, as you can see there, it's sold out. We're happy about that. And also on that day, Saturday, the 6th of November, the Western Heritage Center will be closed, but don't worry, more about that, plenty to do. Another event that's coming up is the History of Education in Prescott by Kelly Cordes, who's of the family of Cordes Junction and so forth, same guy. They really should have called this the super surprising, cool history of education in Prescott, because when the pioneers came here, there were learned people, lawyers, the governor and so forth, and they wanted Prescott education to be as top notch as anything back east. And they did. They really were quite progressive and forward looking. And Prescott schools were the first in Arizona to have a number of things. I don't want to steal Kelly's thunder, but come in for that. That is the 17th on Wednesday from 6 to 8 p.m. Just a donation is all that's asked for. And then this is something we're really excited about. Brad's going to be involved with this. On Saturday, December 4th, is a multiple book signing by multiple authors. We have 6 listed there. Brad Courtney here.
Drew Desmond,
Parker Anderson, Darlene Wilson, the descendant of Soapy Smith, the biggest con man to be in Arizona. He's got his book.
He's still a con man. Soapy Smith.
Right.
You want to see this guy. This guy's interesting.
Absolutely. And also Kathy Lopez of Williamson Valley fame. She's written about that. And somebody who is not on the list, who we're really excited about having, is Nancy Burgess. She reached out to us, and she's a real heavyweight.
Yep.
She'll be bringing whatever books, and I wrote her and I said, well, Nancy, you can bring more than one book. So a lot of people are. And this book signing is the same day as the parade. So you're going to be downtown, or you have a reason to go downtown anyway. And this is a great opportunity for holiday gifts for people who enjoy local history. There'll be a dozen books to choose from, and they can be signed by the authors and personalized for an excellent gift. Okay, moving on to what's happening at Charlotte Hall Museum. On the 6th of November, when the Western Heritage Center is closed, Charlotte Hall is having at least one of its biggest days, if this isn't their biggest day.
My favorite day.
It's the 18th Annual Western History Symposium. And you or I were at
Last year?
a COVID one.
Yeah.
Last year. They were
Took our mask off and everything.
Yeah, that was exciting. And you could still click on that, as a matter of fact, and see what it is. But these are the events going on at the Western History Symposium, which, by the way, do not go to the museum to see this. These are being held at the Prescott Centennial Center, 1989 Clubhouse Drive. At 9:30 a.m., they're having Sally Jacobs, Arizona's first female sports columnist. At 10:30, the story of Herb Jeffries, Hollywood's bronze buckaroo. At 1 o'clock, Haiti Lount Mosher fighting for her business and her life. At 2 o'clock, Junior Bonner, the legacy of summer 1971. Hard to believe they made that film here in Prescott 50 years ago. And actually, that's going to be a big deal, folks, because they're getting together. They're going to have all sorts of going-ons next year to honor the 50th anniversary of the release of the film. The Chamber, the City, the Palace, Charlotte Hall Museum, Western Heritage Center, they're all getting behind that one.
Well, that's with Stewart, right?
Stuart Rosebrook, who with his father wrote a book about Junior Bonner. His father wrote the script for the movie.
Great book, too.
Yeah, really interesting. And then at 3, Tempe Normal's first Latina librarian. Talk about that. And in the evening, they have I Felt the Call and I Must Go, Military Wives on the Arizona Frontier with Jan Clear, which ought to be very interesting as well. They had a dinner, but you had to make your reservation by the 20th, so too late for that. And then also going on at the Charlotte Hall Museum on November 13th from 10 to 3, they have their Living History, a Military Tradition, $12. And on November 20th from 2 to 3 p.m., The Mystery of Lulu Verde. She was either a beloved daughter or a slave child. That sounds kind of like an interesting one as well. So that's what's going on, coming up. A lot for people of history interest to do coming up. We're proud to have on this premiere show of the Drew Desmond Show my co-author, Brad Courtney, who's the Whiskey Row historian.
Self-proclaimed. You say it enough that people start believing you.
That's right.
It works it all the time.
And there you see Brad's first book, Prescott's Original Whiskey Row. What caused you to write that book, Brad?
I can answer that. Well, I have a master's degree in history. And I was actually, before I moved to Prescott, I was taking my thesis and making that into a book. But then in 2010, my wife and I came up here part-time, and we'd been coming up to Prescott for years. And where do you go? If you're visiting Prescott, you go to the plaza and, of course, Whiskey Row. And being a historian, the Whiskey Row just enamored me, because it just reeks of Old West,
Indeed, yes.
But then I was able to retire in 2012, and I went to buy all the books I could find on Prescott. There's plenty of those. We're getting more of them. That we're adding to the collection.
That's true.
But there were no books specifically a definitive kind of history of Whiskey Row, and that surprised me.
Yeah, what an oversight.
Yeah, I mean, no one had done it, and then I just felt like God was going, "You get to write the history of Whiskey Row," and I started diving in, and I started with the fire. But then I go, I want to get the whole thing. I went all the way back to 1864, and the things I discovered were some of them. I go, how is this not more famous?
What do you think is the most famous unknown thing about Whiskey Row?
The the story I tell about the dynamite demon of Whiskey Row, and you know that
That's
one.
a good one. Yeah.
To summarize, a guy named Bill Binkley marries a girl named Bertha Hovey, and after they were married, she told him, "I'm already married." Not only that, no, he got real jealous about that. But not only that, she was one of the Granite Street workers.
Yes, a soiled dove.
And I always said, dude, if you're little, you have a tendency toward jealousy, don't marry a hooker.
Yeah, that's right.
but that didn't bother him. What bothered him is she was a bigamist. When he'd go to her house, I guess they never lived together, and he would, try to get back with her, I guess, and she would just emasculate him, and he felt emasculated, so he started planning this murder-suicide. He worked out at the Last Chance Mine in Walker, gets 6 sticks of dynamite, and just kind of waits. I think he's probably stuck the dynamite into the double decker, it was called, where the parking garage is now. And in the back of the Cabinet Saloon, which is now the Palace, there was a dining area and run by the Chinese. He sees her there with a girl named Bertha. He crawls underneath, puts the dynamite under there. His plan was to light it and go up in obliteration with her, but he decides to take off. The dynamite blast, and it hit the dining room floor, and it was so thick with linoleum, it went out like they were sitting in the eye of a hurricane. Wow. So he comes to see, his work, and there was Bertha standing there alive and well. And finally he gave in. They both denied there were any problems, but finally he gave in, and it was quick trial, and he was sent to Yuma for 10 years, but he served only 3. So that was, to me, like, how was that not more famous?
Yeah, yes,
but there's a bunch more. There's a bunch more there.
Yeah, it's an excellent book. And then that's called Prescott's Original Whiskey Row. Your second book I like to call Extra Crispy. It is the Great Fire. Yeah, the original Whiskey Row, and then the Great Fire.
It took me a while to get that. I go, oh, I see the joke.
Extra Crispy, yeah. How did the Great Fire start?
Well, it's confirmed. It was like what's the Chicago one with the cow? I forget, but there were all these theories at first. But what happened was these miners came into town, and they were staying at the OK Lodging House. And lodging houses were the cheapest form of lodging you could have. Just a room, no light, no electricity, and they had their miners' candlesticks holder, what they carried with them like a flashlight. Well, they went out to party, and then they come back, and there was no light. They stuck the candlestick holder with the candle in there, lit it, and I think they were not thinking clearly. So they left, and we actually have an eyewitness named Bert Lee. He saw that the candle had fallen through onto a bed, and by the time the firefighters got there, it was climbing up the walls, and then there was no water in the mains. And I got to tell this story because you talk about a discovery. When I was researching for the fire, you hear about there was no water in the mains or the wells. And the city engineer, water engineer, his name was John Love. Well, we had a witness that said they could see him with his white horse and a wagon, and he went down and he went over to the reservoir. He actually let water into the mains. But by the time they realized that, they thought there was no water. So that I don't know if this was kept secret, but according to one witness, there was water in the mains the whole time, and they didn't find out until Cortez. They finally figured it out,
Wow.
And it was enormous.
Yeah, it started and it spread down Montezuma past Gurley Street,
Right.
And Granite Street was affected.
The 100 block where the Whiskey Row is now, the alley, and where it used to be the red light district, that was they called those the Badlands, so they were wiped out. Then the next block up was wiped out, and what happened was when the Hotel Burke, which was supposed to be fireproof, went up in flames, it was like an atom bomb went off. So it crossed Gurley Street, and behind a certain business, I think it was the Burmester, there was a storage barn, and just from being near the flames, it went up. So Gurley Street was attacked from behind.
I see. Yeah.
And there was a lot of brick. That's you look at the pictures. This is a good picture book, but it it headed east, and when the fire hit Cortez Street, they figured out there was water in the mains, and they formed a bucket brigade. And these two boys ran up on the east side of Cortez, which was called Office Row, and they would hand the boys these buckets up, and if an ember flew across, they doused it, and they were credited with saving East Prescott. And
Wow.
I like that story. I was a teacher, so that whenever the boy heroes, they were.
Yeah, I have a story to tell you about the Great Fire. Sam Hill Hardware burned down, of course, one of the buildings, and their wholesale distributor was out of Chicago.
Yeah, you gave me that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And Chicago had their Great Fire, and the wholesaler wrote Sam Hill and said, "Hey, we're here for you. We will extend credit for you. We will get you back into business. We understand what having a great fire is like, and we hope that Prescott will be built back better." And indeed it was. And the Hill family was so moved by this that they saved that letter and preserved it to this very day.
You gave me a copy of that. Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Sam Hill's where, pardon me, Sam Hill's where the fire attacked what is now Whiskey Row from behind. And so when the fire entered Sam Hill's, and they were trying to pull out the inventory, but there was petroleum products, ammo, just flammable explosive stuff. And when it hit Sam Hill's, that's when it took a whole new life of its own, and formed its own weather pattern. It was even said.
Oh, that's outstanding. All right, now this third book. What's this about co-author, and how'd you get roped into that?
Yeah, I didn't get roped. I begged you to take part in it. I go, hey, I want in on this.
Murder and Mayhem and Prescott.
Yeah. So I had an idea of just writing kind of a book just of the Whiskey Row stuff. So I took all the Dynamite Demon is one of the stories in there. I took the stories that happened on the Murder and Mayhem stories that happened on Whiskey Row, and Drew took it, from General Prescott. But yeah, that book's done very well.
It really has.
Done well.
Yeah, I've sold a few of them. And a special announcement from the publisher. Why don't you talk about that? You got roped into this again?
Yeah, I roped him this time.
Yeah, that's right.
I roped him both times, actually. But we just signed a contract for a book that's going to be called True Tales of Prescott. And it'll be less Murder and Mayhem, but they're just like the famous story of the baby left on the bar. That's going to be in there. That's probably Arizona's most famous saloon story, and there's a legend that goes with it, and then there's the truth. So I'll weed that out. But that was a fascinating study.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this man, that the baby at the bar. Which bar was it again? Cobb Hall.
Well, that was the legend.
Yes,
so
yes.
It actually happened in the cabinet, which is now the palace.
Well, there you go. Yep. See, he's
But it actually happened. The baby left on the bar. I don't know if they were betting on it, but they were betting and raising money for whoever would adopt it. So they raised money, and they gave it to the probate judge, actually, to give to whoever was going to adopt it. Wow. Probate judge ends up adopting the baby, which is interesting.
That is. Yeah, some of the things I'm working on for the book are True Tales of the Plaza and True Tales of Prescott Vice. So that'll be interesting as well. So we're looking forward to that.
We love Vice.
Yes, we do.
It makes good reading.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Now, aside from your writing, you also have a little bit of a music background. Why don't you talk about that for us?
Back when I was young and good looking, I could sing. I can still kind of sing. But my goal was to become a famous singer-songwriter. I had 3 albums out. I had an agent in Nashville, actually, at one point. But then I became a full-time teacher, and it was kind of put to the side. And when I got here, I also did river trips, and I write about the canyon and the river, and that did very, very well. But when I got here, I came up with this little jingle. Jingle? Is that what you call it? It goes down, let's go down, take me down. And I'd sing it before each lecture. And there he is. But I couldn't put verses to it. And I lost my wife, and I would come, when I'm grieving, I would come down to Whiskey Row and walk through. And I always dreamed of being in love again. And I fell in love with a a beautiful lady named Wendy, and Wendy's the star of this video, which was done by Julie Prescott Trainer and Johan Glidden did produce the song.
Well, there she is, and then
It's my girl.
yeah.
Full of clothes, gonna dress up right.
Let's give it a listen.
I'll be wild and you be Sadie, a dandy cowboy, a beautiful lady walking down the road will be a sight. Let's go down, take me down. Let's go down to Whiskey Road. Let's go down.
Yeah, well, that's awesome, and they can find that link on
YouTube, Down to Whiskey Row, and it's I think 2,200 views now. So
wow, that's true.
we had a tremendous turnout at the Palace. It was surreal. People dressed up in the Old West period stuff, and that's in the video. That was a great night.
Yeah, it was,
Yeah.
and it's a great video. Yeah.
Julie Prescott Trainer did a fantastic job.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's terrific. Well, Bradley, it has been such a pleasure to have you here. We'll need to have you again sometime.
Yeah.
And thank you all for clicking in. The next Drew Desmond show is scheduled for November 20th. We hope to see you then. And have a historic day, everybody.